A cowboy rescued an Apache woman. Then the woman offered him all the widows in town Wild West. The air was dry, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and the distant sound of a river rushing through the canyon. In the quiet of the morning, a lone cowboy rode along a narrow trail, his horse steady and sure-footed. His name was Caleb, a man known in the scattered towns and settlements of the region for his courage and calm under pressure. He traveled mostly alone, relying on his wits, his horse, and the few supplies he carried in his saddlebags. Caleb had been riding since dawn, following the winding trails that connected the small outposts and homesteads scattered across the harsh landscape. Life on the frontier was never easy. Bandits, wild animals, and unpredictable weather were constant dangers, and only those with a strong sense of courage and skill could survive. Caleb had learned this early in life. He had grown up near the plains, helping his father herd cattle, learning to read the land and the skies, and mastering the art of staying calm when trouble appeared. As he rode, Caleb noticed something unusual ahead. The trail bent sharply around a rocky outcrop, and there, near the edge of a small cliff, he saw a figure struggling. At first, he thought it might be a traveler who had lost their way, but as he drew closer, he realized it was a young woman. She was crouched low, her long dark hair tangled and dirty, and she seemed to be in great distress. Around her, 3 men were closing in, their movements aggressive and threatening. Caleb's instincts kicked in immediately. He knew that anyone in that position, alone and outnumbered, had little chance of defending themselves. Without hesitation, Caleb urged his horse forward, the sound of hooves thundering against the rocky trail breaking the tense silence. The bandits turned toward him, their eyes narrowing in surprise and anger. They were armed with knives and revolvers, and they clearly had no intention of backing down. Caleb could feel the tension in the air, the kind that made every muscle in his body alert. He had faced danger before, but something about this moment demanded more than skill. It demanded courage and quick thinking. The young woman, seeing him approach, let out a small, relieved cry. She ducked instinctively, trying to protect herself, but it was clear she had been fighting to stay safe for some time. Caleb's horse reared slightly, and he quickly gained control, letting out a commanding shout that startled the bandits. "Back off," he yelled, his voice carrying over the rocky canyon. "Leave her alone." The men hesitated, uncertain at first. They had not expected anyone to come to her aid. Caleb could see the fear flicker in their eyes, but he also knew fear alone would not stop them. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. Calmly, he drew his revolver, not with the intent to shoot immediately, but to show he was prepared to defend both himself and the woman. In the frontier, showing confidence often mattered as much as skill. "Go on," Caleb said firmly, keeping his voice steady. "Leave her be or you'll regret it." The bandits exchanged glances, their uncertainty growing. Caleb took a slow, careful step forward, making sure his horse stayed between him and the attackers. He could see the tension in the woman's eyes, the way she was trembling, but she had not completely given up. There was a strength there, a determination to survive despite the odds. Caleb admired that courage. It reminded him that even in the harshest situations, people could hold on to hope. After a tense moment, the bandits decided to retreat, muttering curses as they disappeared down a narrow side trail. Caleb kept his revolver ready until they were out of sight, then finally exhaled, the adrenaline leaving his body in a slow wave. He turned to the woman, who was now cautiously rising to her feet. Her clothes were torn and she had clearly been in a struggle, but she was alive, and that was what mattered most. "You're safe now," Caleb said gently, offering his hand. "Are you hurt?" The woman looked at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and relief. I think I'm okay," she said, her voice soft but shaky. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come." Caleb helped her mount a small rise in the trail where they could rest for a moment. He took a careful look at her injuries, bruises forming on her arms and legs, some scratches from the rocky terrain, but nothing seemed life-threatening. He handed her a clean cloth from his saddlebag to wipe the dirt and blood from her face. "My name is Caleb," he said. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to, but I want to help you get somewhere safe." The woman nodded slowly, seeming to relax a little. "I'm Ahuli," she said. I was traveling alone, trying to reach my people, but those men, they attacked me. They said they wanted to take me." Her voice broke slightly, and she looked away, ashamed and frightened. Caleb didn't press her for more details. He had learned long ago that trust could not be forced, and that people revealed their stories in their own time. Instead, he focused on practical matters. "We should get moving," he said. "It's not safe to stay here, and there's a canyon ahead. I know a place where we can rest and plan our next move." Ahuli followed Caleb carefully as he led his horse down a narrow path. The trail was steep and rocky, but Caleb guided them skillfully. Along the way, he kept an eye out for any signs of the bandits, scanning the horizon for movement among the rocks and sagebrush. The morning sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the land, but Caleb paid little attention to the heat or fatigue. His mind was focused entirely on keeping Ahuli safe. As they traveled, Caleb learned a little more about her situation, not through questions but through observation. She was strong, capable, and surprisingly resilient. Despite the attack, she moved with purpose and alertness, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Caleb respected that. On the frontier, courage was not just about fighting, it was about surviving, thinking ahead, and never giving up. By mid-morning, they reached a small cluster of trees near a creek. The water was clear and cold, a welcome sight in the dry, dusty landscape. Caleb led the horse to the water first, letting it drink, and then helped Ahuli lower herself to the ground. They rested in the shade, listening to the soft rustling of leaves and the gentle rush of the creek. For a moment the danger of the morning seemed far away, replaced by the peaceful sounds of the frontier. "I don't know how to thank you," Ahuli said quietly, watching the water ripple over smooth stones. "You risked your life for me, for someone you didn't even know." Caleb shrugged modestly. "Anyone in trouble deserves a chance to survive," he said. "It's just what you do when you see someone in need, nothing more." Ahuli smiled faintly, though there was still a shadow of worry in her eyes. "You're very brave," she said. "Most people would have just ridden past." Caleb shook his head. "Bravery isn't the same for everyone," he said. "Sometimes it's just about doing what you know is right, even when it's hard. You survived because you kept going. That takes courage too." They spent the rest of the morning by the creek, letting the horse graze and resting their own legs. Caleb kept a careful watch, making sure no danger approached, while Ahuli collected some berries and herbs she recognized from her travels. Slowly, the tension in her shoulders eased, and she began to talk more freely, sharing stories of her life, her family, and the tribe she was trying to reach. Caleb listened quietly, respecting her voice and her experiences, realizing that in this harsh land, stories like hers were as valuable as water or food. They reminded him why he continued to help others, even when life was hard. By midday, Caleb knew it was time to move again. The frontier was unforgiving, and they couldn't stay in one place for long. He helped Ahuli to her feet, checked the horse's harness, and together they prepared to continue down the trail. As they rode on, the bond between them began to form, not just of rescue and gratitude, but of shared courage, mutual respect, and the understanding that in a world as wild as this, survival often depended on trusting each other. And so, Caleb and Ahuli moved forward, unaware that this encounter would not only change their own lives, but also set the stage for events that would ripple across the frontier town and the surrounding lands. A story of bravery, trust, and the unexpected ways in which people can touch each other's lives. The trail ahead was narrow and winding, following the curves of the canyon. Caleb led the horse carefully, aware of every loose rock and sudden drop. Ahuli followed closely, her eyes alert and her steps deliberate. Though she was injured and tired, she moved with surprising steadiness. Caleb noticed this and felt a growing respect for her resilience. Life on the frontier was difficult for anyone, but for someone traveling alone, it was even more dangerous. The canyon stretched before them, with high cliffs rising on either side. The sunlight created sharp shadows, making the rocks seem even more jagged and unforgiving. Birds circled above, their cries echoing off the cliffs, and the occasional rustle of a lizard or small animal reminded them that the land, though beautiful, was full of hidden life. Caleb kept a steady pace, letting the horse find its footing, while his eyes scanned the edges of the canyon for any signs of trouble. Bandits, wild animals, or even sudden rockslides could turn a journey like this into a struggle for survival. Ahuli rode silently at first, glancing at Caleb from time to time. She felt a mixture of gratitude, caution, and curiosity. He had saved her life, yes, but there was something about him that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt in many days. He was calm, confident, and careful. Unlike others she had encountered, he did not look at her with suspicion or greed. Instead, he treated her as an equal, as someone worthy of care and protection. Finally, she spoke. "Why did you help me?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying a mix of wonder and caution. Caleb glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "I don't know if there's a simple answer," he said. "Maybe it's because I know what it's like to be alone in a dangerous place. Maybe it's because I can't stand seeing someone in trouble and doing nothing. It just felt right." Ahuli considered his words. In her life, she had seen many people pass by when help was needed. Many had turned away or ignored her tribe's struggles. Caleb's choice felt different. It carried no conditions, no expectation of reward, just the simple act of doing what was right. She realized that trust, once so rare, might slowly be possible. As they continued, Caleb asked her more about herself, not in a probing way but gently, leaving space for her to answer as she felt ready. "Where are you headed?" he asked. Ahuli hesitated for a moment. "I am trying to reach my people," she said finally. "There are dangers along the way, but I have to reach them. They are vulnerable and they need to be protected. Some of them, they are widows and children. They cannot protect themselves fully." Caleb listened carefully. He understood now why the bandits had targeted her. The frontier was full of lawless men who saw weakness as an opportunity. Protecting the vulnerable was not just an act of kindness. It was often a matter of life and death. "I see," he said. "We'll get you there safely, but we have to move carefully. The land is full of surprises and danger can appear without warning." They rode on in silence for a while, each lost in thought. Caleb's mind calculated every step. The safest path, the time of day, the chances of encountering bandits or wild animals. Ahuli, for her part, observed the landscape, recognizing familiar plants, listening to the sounds of the canyon, and slowly learning to trust Caleb's judgments. By late morning, the trail led them to a small flat area near a cluster of pine trees. Here the ground was softer, and there was a small spring where water trickled over smooth stones. Caleb stopped the horse and gestured for Ahuli to dismount. "We'll rest here a bit," he said. "Your legs need a break and the horse does too. We can't keep pushing endlessly." Ahuli nodded, grateful for the pause. As she stepped down, Caleb helped her steady herself. She noticed the calm way he moved, how his hands were sure but gentle. It gave her a sense of security she had not felt in days. The frontier was unforgiving, but in this moment with this man by her side, it felt slightly less threatening. They settled near the spring. Caleb let the horse drink first, then filled a small tin cup with water for Ahuli. She took it gratefully, the cool liquid soothing her dry throat. "Thank you," she said simply, her eyes meeting his. Caleb smiled faintly. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "We're just helping each other survive, that's all." As they rested, Ahuli began to share more of her story. She spoke of her people, the challenges they faced, and the recent conflicts that had scattered families and left many vulnerable. Her voice was calm, but there was a sadness underneath, a recognition of the hardships her community had endured. Caleb listened quietly, letting her speak without interruption. He could feel the weight of her words, and he understood that the danger extended far beyond their immediate situation. "I lost many people I cared about," Ahuli said softly. "Some were taken by illness, some by violence. Now the widows and children are left to protect each other. That's why I travel alone, to guide them to safety. I cannot fail them." Caleb nodded. "You carry a heavy burden," he said, "but you are not alone now. I will help you. We'll find a safe place for you and the people you care about." There was a long silence as they both reflected on the journey ahead. The canyon stretched endlessly in both directions, and the sun climbed higher, reminding them that the day would bring both challenges and opportunities. Caleb could feel the tension in the air, the quiet alertness required to survive. Ahuli, too, seemed to gather strength from his presence, drawing courage from the knowledge that she was no longer completely on her own. After a while, Caleb decided it was time to move again. "We can't stay here forever," he said. "The trail ahead is tricky, but I know a route that will be safer. It will take longer, but it's worth it." Ahuli nodded, adjusting the strap of her pack and steadying herself. She felt a mixture of fear and trust. Fear because the journey was dangerous and unpredictable, but trust because Caleb had proven himself capable, calm, and determined. She began to understand that survival often depended not only on one's own skills, but also on the willingness to trust those who had shown courage and integrity. They resumed their journey, moving carefully along the canyon path. The rocks jutted out sharply, forcing them to navigate with caution. At one point, a sudden gust of wind blew loose gravel from the cliffs above, reminding them both of how quickly danger could appear. Caleb guided the horse steadily, keeping his hand close to Ahuli's shoulder to provide support. She appreciated the small gesture, a silent reassurance that he was there and alert. As the afternoon progressed, they encountered a few challenges. A narrow ledge required them to walk the horse slowly and carefully, and a sudden rustle in the bushes caused them both to freeze in alarm. But each time, Caleb's calm judgment helped them navigate safely. Ahuli began to relax slightly, her confidence in him growing with every step. By late afternoon, they reached a wider section of the canyon where the land sloped gently toward a small grove of trees. Caleb chose this spot to rest for the evening. He led the horse to a patch of grass, letting it graze while he and Ahuli sat nearby. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the rocks and illuminating the canyon in golden light. Ahuli watched the scene quietly, feeling a sense of peace for the first time since the attack. She realized that Caleb's presence had changed her journey, not just because he had saved her life, but because he had given her hope. In the harsh, lonely world of the frontier, hope was as valuable as water or food. Caleb noticed her gaze and smiled. "The day is almost over," he said. "We'll rest here tonight and continue in the morning. The trail ahead will be long, but we'll face it together." Ahuli nodded, a faint smile on her lips. "Thank you, Caleb," she said softly, "for everything." He shook his head. "We'll keep moving and we'll keep each other safe. That's all that matters." As night fell, they set up a small camp near the trees. Caleb kept the fire low, just enough for warmth and light, knowing that too much smoke could attract unwanted attention. Ahuli gathered some dry twigs and branches, learning quickly how to make the fire steady without risking sparks. They shared a simple meal from Caleb's supplies, talking quietly about the day, their hopes, and the journey ahead. By the time they settled to sleep, both felt a sense of quiet determination. The frontier was full of dangers, but together they had begun to face them. Caleb's courage had saved Ahuli, and her resilience inspired him in return. They were no longer just two travelers on a trail. They were partners, relying on each other's strengths and learning that even in a harsh world, trust, respect, and courage could create bonds stronger than fear. And so, as the stars appeared over the canyon and the night settled in, Caleb and Ahuli rested, knowing that tomorrow would bring more challenges, but also more opportunities to prove their courage and determination in a land where survival demanded both. The morning sun rose slowly over the canyon, casting long, golden beams across the rugged landscape. The air was crisp and dry, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Caleb stirred first, his eyes scanning the surrounding cliffs for any signs of movement. The frontier was beautiful, yes, but it was also unpredictable, and a moment of carelessness could cost dearly. He shook the sleep from his shoulders and gently nudged the horse awake, letting it stretch before the day's journey began. Ahuli was already awake, tending to the small fire they had kept alive through the night. Her movements were careful and deliberate, showing that she had learned quickly how to manage life in the wilderness. Though she had been attacked the day before, she now moved with a quiet determination. Caleb admired her strength, realizing that courage came in many forms, not just in facing bandits but in continuing onward despite fear and exhaustion. "Morning," Caleb said softly, not wanting to startle her. "Morning," Ahuli replied, offering a small smile. There was a new light in her eyes, a mixture of hope and resolve. She had survived the attack and the long journey so far, and now, with Caleb's help, she felt a little more confident about what lay ahead. After a simple breakfast of dried meat and bread, they packed their belongings and prepared to move again. Caleb led the horse down the canyon trail, carefully guiding it past sharp rocks and loose gravel. Ahuli walked beside him at first, helping the horse navigate tricky sections and keeping a watchful eye on the cliffs above. The morning was quiet, the kind of silence that only the wilderness could provide, broken occasionally by the distant call of birds or the rustling of leaves in the wind. As they walked, Caleb finally spoke, his voice calm but thoughtful. "Ahuli, I need to ask you something," he said. "You mentioned the widows and children in your community. Can you tell me more about them? I want to understand what we're facing." Ahuli glanced at him, hesitation flickering across her face. Talking about her people was not easy, especially to someone she had only just met. But she sensed that Caleb genuinely wanted to help, not just because it was the right thing to do, but because he understood the importance of protecting the vulnerable. Slowly, she began to speak. "My people live in scattered areas, mostly hidden in the hills and valleys," she explained. "We have had many conflicts with settlers and rival groups. Many families have been broken apart, and there are widows who must care for their children alone. They are strong, yes, but they are not safe without help. That is why I travel, to guide them, to show them safer paths, and to protect them as best I can." Caleb listened attentively, nodding. He understood the gravity of her words. The frontier was full of danger, but it was also full of people who relied on courage and cooperation to survive. The widows she spoke of were not just numbers or stories. They were real lives, depending on guidance and protection to navigate a hostile world. "And these widows, they trust you to help them?" Caleb asked gently. Ahuli nodded. "Yes, they trust me because I have walked these trails before. I know the dangers, the hidden paths, and the places where we can find water and shelter, but I cannot do it alone. I need someone strong and brave to stand with me, to help protect them when danger comes. That is why I asked for your help yesterday." Caleb thought about her words. He had already seen the courage in Ahuli, her determination to survive and to protect her people. He also knew that helping her was not a simple task. It would mean facing more danger, navigating unknown lands, and possibly encountering more enemies. Yet, despite the risks, he felt a deep sense of duty. "I will help," he said firmly. "We'll find your people and make sure they are safe. You're not alone anymore." Ahulai's face brightened slightly, relief mixing with gratitude. "Thank you, Caleb," she said softly. "You do not know how much this means to me." For the rest of the morning, they continued along the trail, moving through rocky terrain that gradually became less steep. The landscape shifted from sharp cliffs to rolling hills dotted with scrub and wildflowers. Caleb kept a careful pace, making sure the horse had enough water and rest, while Ahulai pointed out landmarks and hidden paths she remembered from previous journeys. As they walked, she explained more about the dangers they could face. "There are men who wait along certain trails," she said cautiously. "They are looking for travelers who carry supplies or who are alone. We must be alert at all times and we must trust our instincts. If something feels wrong, we must act immediately." Caleb nodded, appreciating her knowledge. The frontier was unpredictable, and experience mattered as much as strength. He had survived many dangerous situations before, but having Ahulai's guidance gave him an advantage he could not ignore. Her knowledge of the land, the hidden paths, and the dangers made their journey safer and more effective. Around midday, they came across a narrow valley shaded by tall pines. Here, the air was cooler, and the ground was soft with fallen needles. Caleb decided it was a good place to rest and plan the next part of their journey. He led the horse to a small clearing and let it graze while he and Ahulai sat on a fallen log. "I need to tell you something," Ahulai said, her tone serious. Caleb turned to her, giving her his full attention. "There are widows in a settlement not far from here," she continued. "They are hidden from most travelers, but they have been living in fear. They do not have weapons, and some are too young or too weak to defend themselves. If we reach them, I can help organize their safety, but we must move carefully. If the wrong people see us, it could endanger everyone." Caleb considered her words. He knew that protecting these women and children would not be simple. It would require strategy, patience, and courage. Yet he also knew that turning away was not an option. "We'll go," he said decisively. "We'll find them and make sure they are safe. You won't have to do this alone anymore." Ahulai's eyes glistened with gratitude and she smiled faintly. "I never expected anyone to stand with me like this," she admitted. "Most people see only the danger, not the lives that depend on survival." Caleb shrugged modestly. "Maybe they don't understand, or maybe they are afraid, but I am not. We'll face it together step by step." After a short rest, they resumed their journey. The afternoon sun was high, and the heat made the trail tiring, but both Caleb and Ahulai remained focused. Caleb guided the horse carefully, helping Ahulai navigate tricky paths and sharp rocks. They moved steadily, always alert, always aware of the risks. As they traveled, Ahulai shared more about the people they were going to help. She spoke of their skills, their stories, and their courage in the face of hardship. Though they were vulnerable, they were not helpless. Caleb listened, realizing that true strength often came from the willingness to endure, to care for others, and to persevere even when danger was near. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of a small plateau overlooking a hidden valley. Caleb dismounted and helped Ahulai down from the horse. The valley below was peaceful, with scattered huts and gardens. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, showing signs of life. This was the place Ahulai had spoken of, a hidden settlement where the widows and children lived, cautiously protecting themselves from the dangers of the frontier. Ahulai's face softened as she gazed at the valley. "We've almost made it," she whispered. "They will be safe soon." "And they will see that someone cares enough to help." Caleb nodded. He felt a deep sense of purpose. The journey had been difficult, and the challenges ahead were still unknown, but he knew that this was the reason he had traveled these dangerous lands: to protect, to help, and to make a difference. Together, they began the careful descent into the valley, moving slowly to avoid drawing attention. Caleb stayed alert, scanning the edges of the forest and the valley for any signs of danger. Ahulai guided him along hidden paths she had memorized, ensuring that they would reach the settlement without being seen by those who might wish them harm. As they approached the first huts, Ahuli called softly to the people inside, letting them know they were friendly. Slowly, doors opened, and cautious faces appeared, widows and children, each showing a mixture of curiosity, relief, and fear. Ahuli introduced Caleb, explaining that he had helped her and was here to ensure their safety. The widows looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. He had risked his life to protect one of their own, and now he was offering them the same protection. It was a gesture that spoke louder than words, a promise of safety and respect in a world that often offered neither. As Caleb helped guide them to a safer area within the valley, he realized that this was only the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, decisions to make, and dangers to face. But for now, he had fulfilled the first part of his promise, bringing the vulnerable into safety, earning their trust, and showing that courage and compassion could make a real difference in a harsh and unforgiving world. And so, as the sun dipped toward the horizon and the shadows of the valley grew long, Caleb and Ahuli prepared to work together, their partnership strengthened by the journey, the trust they had built, and the shared goal of protecting those who could not protect themselves. The frontier was dangerous, but with courage, patience, and determination, they were ready to face whatever came next. The hidden valley was quiet in the early morning, the sun casting a soft golden glow across the scattered huts and gardens. Caleb had spent the night beside the campfire near the settlement, and now he was awake, scanning the surrounding hills for any signs of danger. The frontier was unpredictable, and even in this seemingly peaceful place, a sudden threat could appear at any moment. He knew he could not relax completely, but he could take comfort in knowing that Ahuli's people were not entirely alone anymore. Ahuli moved among the huts, checking on the widows and children. Her calm presence seemed to reassure them, and she spoke quietly, offering instructions on safety, water, and food. Despite the hardships she had faced, Ahuli remained composed and confident, guiding them with knowledge that only came from experience. Caleb watched her, impressed by her ability to remain focused and strong, even after the dangers they had faced together. "Caleb," she said softly, drawing his attention, "we need to plan for the day. There are paths leading into the valley from the hills, and I'm concerned that bandits might try to find us. We cannot take any chances." Caleb nodded. "Agreed. Let's set up positions and make sure everyone knows where to go if trouble comes. It's better to be ready than to be surprised." They spent the next few hours organizing the settlement's defense. Caleb helped reinforce simple barriers around the huts, showing the women how to use rocks and fallen logs to block paths. Ahuli instructed the children to stay close to safe areas and guided the widows on how to keep watch without causing unnecessary fear. The air was tense, but the people were determined. They knew that survival often required courage, planning, and teamwork. By mid-morning, Caleb and Ahuli decided to scout the surrounding hills. They moved carefully, staying low and keeping a watchful eye on the terrain. Caleb's experience in the wilderness and Ahuli's knowledge of hidden trails allowed them to cover more ground safely. They climbed small ridges and peeked over rocky outcrops looking for any signs of danger. "It's quiet," Caleb said after a while, "but quiet doesn't always mean safe. We need to keep moving and stay alert." Ahuli nodded. "There are people in these hills who look for travelers and settlements. Sometimes they are thieves, sometimes worse. We cannot be careless, not even for a moment." As they continued, they came across a small group of men moving through the brush in the distance. Caleb motioned for Ahuli to stay down, and they observed carefully. The men appeared suspicious, scanning the valley as if searching for something. Caleb whispered, "They are not friendly. We need to return and alert the settlement, but quietly. We don't want to panic anyone unnecessarily." Ahuli agreed, and they retraced their steps, moving silently down the trail. Once they were safely back, Caleb and Ahuli gathered the widows and children and explained the situation in calm, measured words. They instructed everyone to stay in the safest areas of the valley, keeping low and out of sight, while Caleb and Ahuli would monitor the men from a distance. The afternoon was tense but productive. Caleb showed the women how to recognize signs of approaching danger, how to stay hidden, and how to signal for help if needed. Ahuli guided them on which paths were safe and which were risky. The children, though frightened, began to learn the basics of staying safe, understanding that vigilance could be a life-saving skill in the wilderness. By late afternoon, Caleb and Ahuli spotted the group of men again. This time, the men were closer to the settlement, moving with purpose. Caleb's hand rested on his revolver, though he hoped it would not be necessary. He signaled Ahuli, and they moved quietly along a hidden trail to intercept the men before they reached the huts. When they reached the men, Caleb stepped forward, his voice firm and commanding. "Stop right there," he called, his tone leaving no room for argument. The men froze, startled by the sudden appearance of someone who clearly meant business. Caleb could see the surprise in their eyes. They had not expected anyone to be prepared or alert. Ahuli stood beside him, her presence calm but resolute. The men hesitated, unsure whether to fight or retreat. Caleb's stance, combined with the knowledge that Ahuli's people were nearby, made it clear that any attack would not be easy. Slowly, the men backed away, muttering curses under their breath, and eventually disappeared into the hills. Caleb and Ahuli watched them go, making sure they were fully gone before returning to the settlement. The widows and children had remained calm, following the instructions they had been given. Seeing Caleb and Ahuli return safely brought a wave of relief. The settlement had survived its first test, and trust in the two protectors grew stronger. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Caleb and Ahuli sat by the campfire. The children were asleep, and the women were quietly preparing a simple meal. The events of the day weighed on both of them, but there was also a sense of accomplishment. They had faced danger, protected the vulnerable, and shown that courage and careful planning could make a difference. "We did well today," Caleb said quietly, breaking the silence. "But tomorrow will bring new challenges. We have to be ready for anything." Ahuli nodded. "Yes, but today proves something important. Even in a world full of danger, people can protect each other. We can survive if we work together." The fire crackled, sending sparks into the night sky. Caleb looked around at the settlement, seeing the relieved faces of the widows and children. They had found safety, at least for now, and that was a small but meaningful victory. He realized that protecting them was not just about strength. It was about patience, strategy, and understanding the land and its people. The next day brought more challenges. A sudden storm rolled in from the mountains, with gusting winds and heavy rain that turned the trails into slippery mud. Caleb and Ahuli worked tirelessly to keep the settlement safe, reinforcing barriers, securing supplies, and guiding the women and children to sheltered areas. The storm tested their resourcefulness and determination, but they succeeded, demonstrating that preparation and teamwork could overcome even the harshest conditions. Over the following days, Caleb and Ahuli continued their efforts. They scouted the surrounding hills, monitored for approaching threats, and trained the settlement's residents in simple strategies for safety. The widows learned to recognize danger signs, and the children learned to stay calm and follow instructions. Gradually, the settlement began to feel more secure, and the people's confidence in their protectors grew. During one quiet afternoon, Ahuli approached Caleb. "There's something I want to show you," she said. She led him to a small clearing near the edge of the valley, where several women were gathering herbs and tending small gardens. "These women are skilled and brave," Ahuli explained. "They may be widows, but they are not helpless. They have knowledge, courage, and determination. With guidance and protection, they can thrive even here in the wilderness." Caleb watched as the women worked, realizing that Ahuli was right. They were strong in ways that were often overlooked, their strength quiet but unyielding. He felt a deep respect for them and a renewed commitment to help ensure their safety. That evening, Caleb and Ahuli sat by the campfire again, sharing a simple meal and reflecting on the day's events. They had faced danger, protected the vulnerable, and earned the trust of a community that had once lived in fear. But they both knew that the frontier was never truly safe, and that challenges would continue to arise. "We've done well," Caleb said, "but we have to keep moving forward. Danger never rests, and neither can we." Ahuli nodded. "I understand, but I also see that courage, preparation, and trust can overcome much. Together, we are stronger than we would be alone." As night settled over the valley, the settlement lay quiet and safe, at least for now. Caleb and Ahuli knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they also knew that they had proven something important, that courage, wisdom, and cooperation could create safety and hope even in the harshest of environments. And so, as the stars twinkled overhead, the valley held its breath in peace, protected by two unlikely allies, one a seasoned cowboy, the other a determined Apache woman, who had shown that bravery and trust could change the course of lives and create a future where the vulnerable could finally feel safe. The dawn broke over the valley, painting the hills and cliffs in soft shades of gold and pink. Caleb woke early, as usual, scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. The night had been quiet, but the frontier was unpredictable, and he knew that peace was often temporary. He shook off the morning chill and moved to check on the settlement, making sure the firewood, supplies, and watch positions were ready for the day. Ahuli was already awake, moving among the huts to check on the widows and children. She spoke softly to them, offering guidance and reassurance, and her calm presence seemed to soothe their fears. Though they had faced danger before, today was different. Caleb and Ahuli had been by their side for several days now, showing that they could be trusted to protect them. The bond between the protectors and the community was growing stronger with each passing moment. After a simple breakfast, Caleb and Ahuli gathered the women and children. "Today, we will take extra precautions," Caleb said firmly. "We know the land, we know the paths, and we are ready. Stay close, follow instructions, and we will make sure everyone remains safe." The settlement moved with purpose, organizing themselves for any potential threat. Caleb and Ahuli had taught them simple but effective strategies, which paths were safest, where to take cover, and how to signal if danger approached. The women worked together, moving quietly but efficiently, showing the courage and resilience Ahuli had described earlier. The children followed along, listening carefully, learning the importance of calm and careful action. By late morning, Caleb and Ahuli decided to take a scout trip beyond the valley. They wanted to ensure that the surrounding area was clear and to spot any signs of trouble before it reached the settlement. The trail was steep and winding, but Caleb guided the horse carefully, helping Ahuli navigate tricky sections. They moved silently, observing the land with sharp eyes, knowing that danger could appear without warning. As they climbed a ridge overlooking the valley, they spotted movement in the distance. A small group of men, likely bandits, was approaching the settlement. They moved cautiously, but their intent was clear. They were looking for vulnerable targets. Caleb's hand rested on his revolver, though he hoped he would not need to use it. He motioned for Ahuli to stay low and whispered, "We need to act fast. Let's guide them away before they reach the huts." Ahuli nodded, her face calm but focused. She had faced danger before and understood the importance of quick, careful action. Together, they moved down the ridge, using hidden trails and natural cover to intercept the men. As they approached, Caleb stepped forward, his voice firm and commanding. "Stop right there," he shouted, leaving no room for argument. The men froze, surprised by the sudden appearance of two defenders who clearly meant business. Ahuli stood beside him, her presence confident and unwavering. The bandits hesitated, unsure whether to fight or retreat. Caleb's steady stance, combined with Ahuli's calm authority, made it clear that any attack would not succeed. Slowly, the men backed away, muttering curses under their breath, and eventually disappeared into the hills. Returning to the settlement, Caleb and Ahuli found the women and children waiting anxiously. Seeing that the threat had passed brought a wave of relief. The people began to understand that Caleb and Ahuli were not only capable protectors, but also trustworthy allies who would risk themselves for the community. Gratitude and respect grew in their eyes, and a sense of safety settled over the valley. That afternoon, Caleb and Ahuli helped the widows organize the settlement further. They reinforced the huts, improved the hidden paths, and created signals to communicate quickly in case of future danger. The women worked tirelessly, learning from Caleb and Ahuli, and slowly the settlement became a place of both safety and community. The widows began to realize that even in a harsh world, they could protect themselves and their children with the right guidance and courage. As the sun began to set, painting the valley in warm shades of orange and red, Ahuli approached Caleb. "There is something I want to show you," she said softly. She led him to a small gathering of women near the center of the settlement. They were preparing a simple meal together, working side by side with a quiet determination that spoke volumes. "These women are strong," Ahuli explained. "They have faced loss, danger, and hardship, yet they continue to care for their children and for each other. They are survivors, and now they have hope." Caleb watched them, feeling a deep sense of admiration. He realized that his role was not just to protect, but also to empower. By showing courage and guidance, he and Ahuli had given the widows and children a chance to reclaim safety, independence, and dignity. He felt a quiet pride, knowing that their efforts had made a meaningful difference in the lives of these people. That evening, the settlement gathered near the fire, the children playing quietly while the women prepared food. Caleb and Ahuli sat together, reflecting on the events of the past days. They had faced danger, taught survival skills, and earned the trust of the community. The valley, once a place of vulnerability, now felt like a sanctuary. "You've done something remarkable," Caleb said quietly, turning to Ahuli. "You've kept these people together, guided them through danger, and now they can feel safe. You've given them hope." Ahuli smiled faintly. "I could not have done it alone. You have been brave and steady, and your help has been more than I could have hoped for. Together, we have made a difference." The fire crackled softly, sending sparks into the night sky. Caleb looked around the settlement, seeing the relaxed faces of the women and the laughter of children playing under the stars. This was a victory, small in some ways but enormous in meaning. They had transformed fear into trust, danger into safety, and uncertainty into hope. As the night deepened, Caleb and Ahuli prepared to rest, knowing that the frontier would continue to bring challenges, but also new opportunities for courage and resilience. The bond between them, forged through shared danger and mutual respect, had grown stronger, and the people of the settlement had come to rely on their protection and guidance. Over the next few days, Caleb and Ahuli continued to work with the community. They taught the women more strategies for safety, helped the children learn about the land, and monitored the surrounding area for potential threats. Each day brought new lessons, but also new successes. The widows gained confidence, and the settlement slowly became a place of stability and hope. One afternoon, as they walked through the valley, Ahuli stopped and turned to Caleb. "You know," she said, "I never imagined that anyone would stand with me like this. Most people see only danger, but you have shown that courage and trust can change everything." Caleb smiled quietly. "I didn't do it for praise," he said. "I did it because it was the right thing to do, but I'm glad we could help. Seeing these people safe, that's enough reward for me." Ahuli nodded, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "You have given them more than safety. You have given them hope, and that is something no one can take away. As the days passed, the valley remained peaceful. Caleb and Ahulai's efforts had created a community that was not only protected, but also empowered. The widows and children learned to live with confidence, knowing that they could rely on each other and on the guidance of their protectors. The fear that had once haunted the valley slowly faded, replaced by trust, respect, and a shared determination to survive and thrive. Finally, the day came when Caleb and Ahulai stood at the edge of the valley, looking out at the land they had helped protect. The sun rose, casting a warm light over the settlement, and the people moved about their daily tasks with a sense of calm and purpose. The journey had been difficult, filled with danger and uncertainty, but it had also been filled with courage, determination, and hope. Ahulai turned to Caleb. "You have done something extraordinary," she said. "You have helped me protect my people, and you have shown them that courage and trust can create safety. I cannot thank you enough." Caleb shook his head modestly. "We did it together," he said. "You guided us, and we faced the dangers side by side. That's what mattered." As they watched the settlement thrive, Caleb and Ahulai knew that their efforts had created a lasting impact. The widows and children were safe, empowered, and ready to face the challenges of the frontier with courage. And in the quiet of the valley, they could finally rest, knowing that their bravery, partnership, and dedication had changed lives for the better. The frontier was still wild and unpredictable, but for the people of the valley, hope had returned. And for Caleb and Ahulai, the bond they had formed through danger and trust would remain strong, a reminder that courage, compassion, and cooperation could overcome even the harshest of challenges.